Morning everybody, my name is Emily McGowan and I am the Chief Executive of Scottish Borders Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of myself and my colleagues from Edinburgh, Fife, Mid and East Lothian and West Lothian Chambers, we'd like to thank you very much for taking part in this event today. This is really a great opportunity for the business community within the 6 regions represented by the Edinburgh and South East Scotland City region deal to find out more about the deal, and as an opportunity to engage with and benefit from the deal. So we would really encourage you to put your thoughts, comments and questions into the chat, and we can save those later and use those as a bit of insight into what your thoughts are about the deal. And we hope that you enjoy the session, and we thank everyone who's agreed to speak as well today. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Alan Mitchell, who is the Chief Exec of Fife Chamber of Commerce, who's going to be the host for today's event. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Emily. Fabulous job. You wouldn't believe, she told us beforehand she was really nervous. Nobody would have had a clue that that was the case. Well done. So listen, good morning everybody and welcome to the event. I'm Alan Mitchell and I'm the Chief Executive at Fife Chamber of Commerce. And as Emily said, please use the chat function to introduce yourself to all the delegates. We've got members of all the different chambers here today, and use the chat function as well to post any questions you want, and we'll pick those up for the 2 Q&A panel sessions that come later on in the event. As we'll discover over the course of the next 90 minutes or so, the Edinburgh and South East Scotland region city deal is a massive undertaking. It's one of these funny money sums, 1.3 billion over 15 years, committed to deliver multiple projects to benefit the people, the businesses and the communities all across the region. And that scale is reflected in the packed agenda we've got for the event today, with a lot of speakers, and make no apologies for that, lined up to start conveying as much information as we can to local businesses about what the deal is and what it means to them and what it could mean to them and how they can get involved. Obviously, we want to get through all the presentations and leave as much time as possible for questions and discussions. And I will need your help to achieve that as I kind of chair the session. So speakers, please, if you can keep to the time that you've been allocated, that would help greatly. And chamber members, if you could please just keep yourself muted unless you're asking a question. And when we get to the Q&A, I will only take questions through the chat. I think otherwise it gets a bit messy if they're coming in the chat. People have got their hands up. Well, for me anyway, it's awfully hard to follow. So I'll take all the questions through the chat, and myself and my chamber colleagues will obviously be monitoring that as we go through, so we don't miss anything. And the event today is being recorded, but please don't let that kind of inhibit your contribution today. So enough from me. We'll crack on with the first of the speakers. And our first contribution is Councillor David Ross from Fife Council, who is the co-chair of the Deals Joint Committee. So David, welcome and thank you, and the floor is yours.
Thanks Alan, and thanks Emily as well for the introduction. And I'd like to add my welcome and thanks to everyone for joining our event today. As Alan has said, I'm Councillor David Ross. I'm the co-leader of Fife Council along with my colleague Councillor David Alexander, and we rotate the chair of the Joint City Region Committee annually between the 6 councils involved in the deal. This year it's Fife's turn, so it falls to me to give the introduction to this event. The Joint Committee is the overall decision-making body for the deal. It comprises the 6 political leaders in the region and 3 additional representatives, one from the Regional Higher and Further Education Consortium, and the chair and vice chair of the Regional Enterprise Council, which provides the voice for business and the third sector on the deal. And Claire Patullo, who chairs that group, I think will follow me in a few minutes to explain more about the role of the Regional Enterprise Council. The main part of today's event is a chance to hear from the leads for skills, innovation, transport, housing and culture themes who will provide more detail on these key elements of the deal, and there'll be an opportunity, as Alan has said, to put questions to the speakers. Today we want to focus on the relevance of the city-region deal to business. At first, I'd like to spend just a few minutes to give you a general overview of the deal. The city-region and growth deals came to Scotland in 2014 when Glasgow secured the first deal. Edinburgh and South East Scotland city region began developing a case and a package of measures to secure similar investment to build on our city region's unique strengths, but also to address our challenges. We aim to deliver transformational programmes which promote inclusive economic growth for the benefit of the whole region, and also contributing to the inclusive growth for Scotland and the UK. Our deal had a long genesis, lots of tears and heartache, I think, coming to the conclusion of it. The heads of terms were agreed with the Scottish and UK governments in July 2017, and the deal was formally signed in August 2018. The themes, programmes and projects that feature in the deal were a product of negotiation between the partners and the Scottish and UK governments. And we as regional partners developed our proposition through discussions with community planning partners, including the Chambers of Commerce and wider business interests. Overall, we secured the largest deal in Scotland. The deal involves £300 million from each of the Scottish and UK governments. And as Alan has said, alongside partner, private and third sector contributions, we expect a total of over 1.3 billion of investment will be delivered through the deal. Amongst the benefits, the deal will deliver 41,000 new homes, and it will provide 21,000 new jobs. Our integrated regional employability and skills programme was the first of its kind, and through this, residents will be upskilled to enable them to move on from low-skill, low-wage jobs. And those measures will benefit individuals, communities and businesses across the region. I think the deal is progressing very well. Less than 3 years in, business cases for nearly all of our directly controlled projects have been approved. The deal is regarded as an exemplar by the Scottish and UK governments. From the beginning of the deal process, regional partners have worked very well together with a common purpose, building trust between us, and I believe that contributed in no small way to our ultimate success in securing the city-region deal. That regional cohesion continues, and the deal has acted as a catalyst for greater collaboration, for strategic coordination across transport, housing, economic development and land use planning. And I think Paul Lawrence, the Executive Director for Place at City of Edinburgh Council, will say more about that later. On the innovation side, Jarno Eskalainen will speak about this later, but the programme is already exceeding targets set for attracting corporate research and development teams, attracting investment in high growth companies, establishing high growth ventures, and generating funding to support research, innovation and entrepreneurship. And here I think the contribution of our university stands out. The way in which the deal programmes pivoted to respond to the pandemic has been remarkable, and I think it owes a great deal to the professionalism and hard work of our officers and our partners that we have addressed it and taken those measures that have been needed to address the changes through the pandemic. Steps taken have included a dedicated jobs portal, grants for micro businesses, bus priority measures, progressing a health and social care skills gateway, and supporting national research into the COVID outbreak. As I mentioned earlier, one of the most pleasing aspects of the deal has been the way the different councils and other partners have worked together. The deal has offered us a framework and opportunities to come together to work collaboratively and to engage with both governments that didn't exist before. And I think party politics have largely been set aside so we can work together towards the common goals we've set. So the governance created for the deal is increasingly being used more broadly. building upon the regional collaboration created by the deal and its successful delivery of cross-regional projects. It provides a platform to embark on a new relationship between the Scottish and UK governments, national agencies and regional partners, which lets us align strategy, investment and funding to deliver prosperity and well-being across the region and for the rest of Scotland. And I think that's really important. Whilst that 1.3 billion deal is a very significant level of investment, measured over its 15-year lifetime and as a percentage of the Scottish bloc, it's less than 1% of government spend. But we believe the deal can have a positive impact well beyond this monetary value. We intend to build upon the success of the Edinburgh and South East Scotland City Region deal to help lead the national economic recovery, with this city region setting the economic agenda that drives sustainable economic growth and prosperity across Scotland. So it's vitally important that all regional partners, and particularly the private and third sectors, are fully engaged and supportive of that ambition, as together we strive to make Edinburgh and South East Scotland a better place to live, work, study, visit and invest for current and future generations. So thank you, and I'd like to hand back to Alan. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. A very positive and upbeat message to start us off with. So thank you very much for that. And as David said, our next speaker is Claire Patullo, who will explain a bit more detail the remit of the Regional Enterprise Council, which I believe she chairs. So Claire, thank you for joining us today, and over to you.
Okay, thank you, Alan, and thank you, Councillor Ross, and hello, everybody. Nice to be here today. Goodness me, I've lost my words. Yeah, I'm Claire Patullo. I'm the Chief Executive of Edinburgh Social Enterprise Network, and that's a partner in the Edinburgh Third Sector Interface, and I'm also the Chair of the Regional Enterprise Council. The Regional Enterprise Council was created and flows from the Scottish Government's Enterprise and Skills Review, and I'm going to read an excerpt from that because I couldn't memorise this bit. So the purpose of the review was to encourage the development of regional economic partnership arrangements built around the experiences, structures and learning from city deals, and with the expectation that these partnerships will evolve over time and be underpinned by the participation of the regional's key private, public and third sector interests, including community planning partnerships, universities and colleges. So Councillor Ross has already given us a flavour and a feel for how the City Region deal has brought those different sectors and partners together in this strategic framework. And part of that in Edinburgh, I think each of the deals was left to devise their own governance structures to a large degree. And in Edinburgh, it was recognised that it was vital to have both the business sector, yourselves, and the third sector as integral parts of this governance structure, and not be sitting on the periphery and looking in, but to be a key and central part of that. So the Regional Enterprise Council was established in 2018, not long after the official deal was signed off. But I remember some of the painful and long conversations that Councillor Ross referred to, because I was involved in the City Region deal for 2 years before that, helping to represent my sector and engage with my peers across the region in informing certainly the agenda around the inclusive growth elements and the employability strategy. So there was a lot of work went into this before any formal structures were created. So I think it was a huge achievement that we got the deal signed off. So the overarching purpose of the Regional Enterprise Council is, as I say, is to enable the voices of business and the third sector to come together and help to guide and inform the implementation of the capital projects were already in place, but it was how did we make those meaningful to communities? How did we make that meaningful to the businesses and the third sector that were already operating in the city? How did we align what they were doing and ensure that their efforts worked in cohesion with the City Region deal? So that's what we aim to do through the Regional Enterprise Council, and to ensure that the impact of the deal, and that's a really important bit for us as a Regional Enterprise Council, that the impact of the deal reaches all citizens and all communities across the region, and it's not just a group of officers and elected members and interested parties having conversations in regional offices and things, and it doesn't make any difference to anybody that lives in the area. We want to make an impact on our community, a positive impact for our citizens and our communities. So Councillor Ross referred to the key themes of the deal, and the membership of the Regional Enterprise Council has been drawn to try and represent those themes. And for example, we have Stephen Dross of Codebase, and we have Stephen Ingledew of FinTech Scotland, and they provide vast expertise in data and innovation. But we also have Gavin Hamilton, who's the major projects director at Taylor Wimpey, and Niall Istefan, who's the chief executive of Yield and Housing in the Borders. They provide their housing expertise from 2 different sectors, so that's great. I'm not going to list everybody on the group. It's a growing body, it's a growing kirk, but it would be of particular relevance to yourselves, given this is a Chamber of Commerce event, to say that Robert Carr is a member of the Regional Enterprise Council, and Robert, I know, is with us today, and he's a past president of the Edinburgh Chamber of Commerce. And Robert's been involved with the Regional Enterprise Council from the inset, and he's a great advocate for us, and he undertakes lots of extra duties for us, so thank you, Robert. We also have Emily is one of our newest members of the Regional Enterprise Council, Emily McGowan, who's our host today and represents the Chambers of Commerce across the region. And we also were recently joined by Gary Clark from the Federation of Small Businesses. And we felt it was important to bring on the Chamber of Commerce and the Federation to strengthen our connections with businesses of all sizes across the region, because at the end of the day, it's businesses who will be delivering a lot of this work, who will be being involved in the construction, who are involved in creating those employment opportunities, who will be taking forward the legacies of the City Region deal. So what does the Regional Enterprise Council do? We don't just sit and talk to each other. It's all very nice, and we have built and strengthened networks by doing that, but we've also performed a valuable role in inputting to the region's response to things like the Benny Higgins advisory group on economic recovery. So we contributed to the City Region deal's response to that, and the Logan Review, which focused on the Scottish technology ecosystem. Obviously, people like Stephen Ingledew were very helpful for us to form our view and understand the Logan Review better. We've helped to shape the development of strategic sites, such as key areas in Fife and the waterfront in Edinburgh. Having had presentations from the officers leading those initiatives, we've been able to input the views of businesses and the third sector and community needs to that, and pleased to see that these comments have been taken on board. We've also sought to ensure that the deal's inclusive growth focus to reduce inequality and increase well-being, and that's a critical part for us. That comes up at every conversation we have at the REC. It's about well-being, it's about inclusiveness, it's not just about economic growth and growth for growth's sake. And we have contributed to the development of the benefit realisation plan for the deal, and we're helping to ensure that the deal will create new economic opportunities as well. We have, in addition to this, we were instrumental in securing additional funds at the end of the last financial year from the Scottish Government to implement a community wealth building pilot across the region. So that involves partners within local authorities and the third sector, looking at mapping community wealth building and piloting some Test for Change activities across the region over the next year, and that's going to be of great benefit to the region. And in line with the original ambition of evolving influence for the Regional Enterprise Council, we're providing input from our knowledge of the commercial and third sector on matters of the greatest significance for the City Region deal, and Paul Lawrence will tell us more about that later on, and that's in relation to the Regional Prosperity Framework. And again, that's about helping the deal reach into communities with the aim of meaningful and lasting impact at a local level. So I hope that's given you a flavour of the Regional Enterprise Council, and I'm more than happy to try and answer any questions that you might have about it, or have a discussion with any of you at a later date about the Regional Enterprise Council. So thank you, and I'll pass back to Alan.
Thank you very much, Claire. Great to hear your passion coming through, and again, great to hear of some positive developments happening already. So that's fabulous. Thank you very much. So yeah, as has been mentioned a couple of times, there are 5 themes that are kind of going to drive the projects within the city deal. So our next section of the event is going to start looking at those 5 themes in a little bit more detail. So to kind of give us that introduction, and then in turn introduce some of the speakers who are going to just give us a little bit more detail about each one. We're delighted to welcome Monica Patterson, the Chief Executive of East Lothian Council. So Monica, over to you, and we're looking forward to hearing more.
Thanks, Alan. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. As Alan says, I'm Monica Patterson. I'm Chief Executive for East Lothian Council, and I'm also the immediate past chair of the City Region Deals Executive Board. Firstly, it's fantastic that so many people have come along this morning, and we're all really delighted about that. I am, however, also very conscious that it'll be difficult to do full justice to all the work underway and programmed across the themes and the city region in the time available. There's a small amount of time available for questions and answers at the end of this segment. However, I would highlight that we're happy to run more detailed sessions on any of the particular themes or more geographically focused events, whatever suits. Councillor Ross explained the convenership of our main committees and how that rotates each year. Last year, as chair of the executive board, I was particularly proud of the continued progress made with the deal and with the strength of the regional partnership. And I think that last point is really important. Across the skills, data-driven innovation and transport themes in particular, activity was adjusted to respond to the particular challenges of the pandemic. The City Region deal and the strength of the regional partnership provides us with much greater ability to engage with and to influence government. When Executive Board Chair, I was keen to impress upon both governments that this city region is a major and significant driver for the Scottish economy. Economically, this region is a national force for good, acting as a catalyst for the country as a whole. The region has significant potential to deliver opportunity to its citizens and to the rest of Scotland, and investment in this city region is vital for the nation's well-being. And that's always been key and a major priority, but obviously so much more important and so much more of a priority in the context of the pandemic. We have a strong, functioning and very ambitious regional partnership. I'll introduce key thematic leads to outline the successes within their respective programmes and issues of particular relevance to business. In the interest of time, I'll introduce each of the speakers as we come to them on the programme, and I'd also ask speakers if they could stick to the 5 minutes allocated. Later in today's proceedings, we'll move on to describe how we intend to build on the deal's success to provide future prosperity across the region and for the national benefit. I'll start off this morning by asking Rona Hunter, who's Chief Executive of Capital City Partnership, to give us an update on the skills workstream. Rona, over to you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. I've got a very short number of slides I'm going to try and put up on the screen, and hopefully this will work. Can people see that?
Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful. Right, so I'm going to talk about the employability and skills element of the City Regional Deal. The reason that we developed that and put the pitch in many ways was about getting opportunities for all the citizens within the 6 regions from what this new work will generate, but it's also linking back into that fair work and tackling inequalities, hitting the Scottish Government's target of making Scotland the best place to live, work, invest and do business. And things that we've been doing under the wider City Regional Deal include things like adopting living wage, looking at certain sectors, for example, construction, where we can close gender gaps, seeing how we can actually support families overall holistically to make the most of all the opportunities that are coming up. And also, I think more relevant for this group, supporting where we can for COVID recovery with small grants. So what I'll do is I'll go through the 7 themes that we have, and I'm going to pick out a couple of things that might be relevant to this actual audience. So we have the Data-Driven Innovation Gateway, and that is to bring together partners to provide routes into DDI careers. And we have a number of programmes going on in schools, colleges, universities, and in the workplace. What might be particularly relevant for this group is to be aware that the Data Skills Lab have a £500 individual account. So any of you members can individually apply for £500 to get data training. And we're seeing data more and more as being part of all businesses for you to better understand how do people engage with your business, how do people maybe book into appointments with you, and so on and so forth. Housing Construction Innovation Gateway, again, that is to bring providers and partners together to look at construction and low carbon careers. And we've got a number of programs going on within there to make sure that people are getting connected to these new sorts of jobs that are coming and the higher skilled jobs to move into. It might be for members of this group of interest to come to our Meet the Buyer event on the 8th of June, which is giving a summary of all of the procurement that's going on under the City Regional Deal, which in the initial stages links very much to the HCI element of that. To get a better understanding, it might be that some of your members want to bid in for some of those smaller opportunities. So that's on the 8th of June. Anything I'm mentioning here that you want details of, I can send a summary email to Emma with all the links so you can look at it after. We also have the Integrated Employer Engagement theme, and that's to establish a no wrong door approach to employer relationships. We have had an employer fund that we developed across the 6 regions to give out grants as a COVID response, again of interest to your members. We have a new employer fund being developed just now for launch again in November. And that's administered through our Business Gateway and our chamber colleagues. We also have a community benefit portal we've created. So again, we can link back from communities what they would like to see coming from procurement opportunities and have that better embedded and linked through. And we also created a COVID-19 jobs portal as an emergency action for the amount of displacement of jobs going on. And that again, we're going to do a review of that later in the year as hopefully we come out of an economic recovery. But again, your members might find if they do have redundancy situations or recruitment situations that that's a good portal to access and use, and it's free at the point of use. We have an intensive family support service, and that is to work with the 144 families across the 6 regions to give them more holistic skills to access all the opportunities. We also do a large focus on income maximisation, again for your members. If there are people within your organisation or your network struggling, needing that support about how do they manage the income coming into their household during these difficult times, people may be on furlough, for example, please, we'll send the number around, you can contact us, there might be something in your membership for that. We also have an integrated knowledge systems theme, and that's where we're bringing together the actual data tracking systems of how people are getting support, getting into jobs, and then looking at how we can look at that data to better inform future commissioning and how we're actually making better impact on public money. We also have the workforce mobility, which is becoming more to the forefront about looking at how, what are the transport barriers to employment, training and education. That has been majorly impacted with COVID because we're waiting to see, I'm sure all you businesses are waiting to see, are people going to stay working from home? Are we going to be travelling as much? What is the disruption and change? And how do we need to influence transport policy to make the best use of that? And finally, again, might be of interest to the group, we have a labour market and analysis and evaluation theme led on by Skills Development Scotland, and that's to produce insights to help us shape how we are investing our money going forward. One thing that's been of real interest is in the health and social care insight, because there's been a big disruption and change to that sector, lots of new job opportunities coming as a result of COVID, and see how we can inform a pathway to those higher skilled jobs. And you might also, as a membership, be interested in a piece of work we're undertaking around green jobs. Everyone keeps talking about green jobs. Well, what is a green job? What does that job description look like? What is that job? What is the salary? So we're doing a report on that to better understand that. And again, we can share that around everybody so we're better placed, because you might find within your small business that you have green jobs. It's just nobody's kind of explained to you how to understand and package that. So that is the whistle-stop tour of the Integrated Regional Employability and Skills theme. And I'm going to try and stop sharing. And I think I hit my 5 minutes, I'm hoping, on that side of it.
Well done, Rona. That was fantastic. You packed so much into 5 minutes. You've set the bar there. Thank you. Can we quickly move on to our next speaker? There's a slight adjustment to the programme. So our next speaker is Grace Vickers, Chief Executive of Mid-Lothian Council. And Grace is going to talk about the transport work stream.
Thank you, Monica, and it's great to be here with you all on this beautiful sunny morning, hence the sunglasses. So as you're hearing, the City Region deal is delivering major investments, and it's vital that the region is served by a world-class transport infrastructure. So there are two specific projects which are funded under the City deal theme in terms of transport, and that is the Sheriff Hall upgrade and the works taking place at West Edinburgh. But several other key projects also have important transport dimensions, as you would understand, including the Easter Bush business case, the food and drink innovation at the Queen Margaret University, and strategic housing sites that require transport improvements to be unlocked, such as Dunfermline, Edinburgh's waterfront, the developments at Shawfair, and also the developments at Blindwells and East Lothian. The Easter Bush business case was approved by Joint Committee in March, and you'll hear more about that later on. And on Friday, we are taking the Food and Drink Innovation Park and the Dunfermline Housing business cases to Joint Committee. So it's really great to see progress is made here. And all of those business cases also went through the Transport Appraisal Board, which I chair. The West Edinburgh business case is expected to be presented early next year, and progress continues on Sheriff Hall, with an update being provided by Transport Scotland to the Joint Committee this Friday. In terms of the Transport Appraisal Board and other groups, as I said, I chair the Transport Appraisal Board within the City Region Deal governance structure. And I believe that this board has really helped local authorities to work together on a regional basis. We also work with Sestran and Transport Scotland to help shape transport policy, strategy and priorities across the city region by influencing both national and regional transport policy. The Transport Appraisal Board also works across the deal's governance structure to ensure strong links between transport and the other programmes, as I mentioned, such as housing and also the innovation work. And you heard a wee bit before about the mobility hubs. We also look beyond the deal at other key transport interventions to identify how partnership working can enhance what is required. We're also considering joint bids into funding opportunities such as the mobility hubs. However, when COVID-19 hit, we decided to form a regional transport transition group. We meet every 2 weeks and have done so since June last year to look at the latest trends and how we can help support public transport as lockdowns and restrictions begin to ease, and that's going to be really important in the weeks and months moving forward. Through this group so far, we've secured 1.8 million in addition to what we've already secured through the City deal. And that was last autumn for interventions for temporary improvements in bus priority across the major corridors into the city. And the work taking place across these major corridor infrastructures is going to be really important moving forward. And these interventions are now just about all in and complement one another. And the impact will really be felt once traffic returns to pre-pandemic levels and more people use buses. And we're interacting with that data on a fortnightly basis with Transport Scotland to understand the changes in demands, particularly when people are working from home and as they gradually return to offices, if indeed they do. We also recently submitted a very large cross-regional bid into the government's 500 million bus partnership fund for bus improvements, and we will hear back on the outcome of June, so we can keep you updated on the progress with that. In terms of major projects, Sheriff Hall, which I mentioned before, the Sheriff Hall roundabout is currently the only junction on the A720 Edinburgh City bypass, if you know that area, that is not grade separated, which means the city bypass is at the same level as the A7 and the A6106 local approach roads. So the Scottish Government's commitment through the City Region deal includes up to 120 million to support improvements for the grade separation at Sheriff Hall roundabout. And this project is being delivered by Transport Scotland, hence why it's really important we get regular updates into the Joint Committee. And as I said, the next update is this Friday. The project will also help local businesses by quicker and more predictable journeys, new business opportunities through supporting future development in the region, including the South East Wedge development opportunities around housing and also the bio quarter, which is really exciting, and skills development, supporting wider skills development in the construction sector as well. Although in the Mid-Lothian Edinburgh area, these benefits will spread benefit in the economy inclusion across the whole region, as you might understand. In terms of West Edinburgh, this is recognised as a key national economic asset and perhaps the most important gateway to Scotland, and as a significant business investment location with potential to be internationally competitive. The vision for West Edinburgh can only be delivered through the investment in a strategic package of transportation improvements that provide long-term resilience and support strong connectivity between neighbouring authorities. And the Scottish Government have committed 20 million for investment to support public transport infrastructure improvements identified by the West Edinburgh Transport Appraisal, and also the City of Edinburgh Council has committed another 60 million to this part of the West Edinburgh works. The programme is currently refining proposals and will publish OBCs in September 21 this year. Subsequently, this will confirm the package of projects to be taken through the FBC stage, and emerging indications suggest that the package of projects is likely to include a park and ride site situated at the Kilpunk outskirts of the Broxburn area, a series of bus lanes across the A8 to 9 and the A8, and also enhancements to cycle infrastructure along the corridor, including upgrades to existing and the implementation of new missing link sections that are currently occur there. Benefits include construction opportunities, linking with housing and construction infrastructure skills gateway, and improved and more reliable journey times, and encouraging modal shift from private car to sustainable forms of transport and business opportunities in West Edinburgh. As I mentioned earlier, the Easterbush business case was recently approved. This is a really exciting business case itself. It involves a major investment in an agri-tech hub on the University of Edinburgh campus, which will be world class when everything is up and running. Both Mid-Lothian Council and University of Edinburgh recognise that adequate road access to the site must be provided if constraints on the further development of Easterbush are to be avoided. And the City Region deal funding and it has therefore been allocated to enable the effective implementation of local development plan strategy, and also that whole A701 corridor that links Borders to Mid-Lothian and then into Edinburgh itself. The business case for the agriculture hub and roads improvement have been approved, and an officer working group has now been established to oversee the programme, and they had their inaugural meeting just this week. These improvements we think will bring significant benefits, enabling and supporting future investment across the wider Mid-Lothian science zone, including the Biocampus, Technopole and the Morden Institute, as well as significant housing planned on the A701 corridor itself. The new roads and the junctions will add capacity to the local road network, improve journey times and facilitate reprioritising road space to deliver sustainable transport improvement measures, prioritising walking, then cycling and bus-based public transport along the existing A701. These measures will create safer and potentially segregated access to and from the Easterbush campus and the A720 Edinburgh City bypass, and this is why we're so excited about this particular development. So in summary, Monica, it's fair to say a huge amount of work is ongoing with the transport strand of the City Region deal, given that it interacts with all of the other themes. And as described, we have also actively responded to the issues caused by the pandemic and will continue to do so as we ease out of lockdown. The regional partnership, I should have mentioned, is also extremely effective, and that the meetings that we do as part of the transport transition work also involves Falkirk and Clackmannanshire councils, as well as the City Region deal councils. And we're building upon this effective regional collaboration, both within and beyond matters of transport. And you'll hear from Paul Lawrence later in relation to the development of the Regional Prosperity Framework, within which transport is an important component part. So thanks for listening to all of that this morning. And before we hand over to the next update, I'll now hand back over to Monica.
Thanks for that, Grace. And in the short time available, you've really outlined the magnitude of investment that's taken place through the deal. Fantastic summary there. Thank you. I'll quickly hand over to our next speaker, who's Andrew Kerr, Chief Executive of the City of Edinburgh Council. And Andrew's going to talk to us about the housing work stream. So Andrew, over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Monica. And hi, folks. It's been a bit of an extraordinary year for every part of the economy, and not least of which for housing and construction. But I think it's fair to say in this case that despite the year we've just had, that the housing pipeline and the pipeline of affordable housing coming towards the region is very strong. And that's best exemplified in 7 strategic sites that the City Region deal are delivering. Blindwells, Calderwood, Dunfermline, Edinburgh's waterfront, Shawfair, Tweedbank and Winchborough, which is well on its way, of course. And that will create a housing supply of over 40,000 houses. And it's, if we talk about the wellness agenda, which was talked about earlier, etc., that of course brings a whole bunch of economic, environmental and social benefits to the region. On its own, a very big strategic initiative. This week, as Councillor Ross pointed out, we're going to bring the Dunfermline business case to the Joint Committee, which will create 8,000 homes in Dunfermline alone and start to ensure the future of that town as we go forward. And then very soon, later in the year, City of Edinburgh will bring its outline business case for its waterfront. 3,500 net zero homes, a business startup space, Europe's largest coastal park, a creative arts, culture and leisure venues, and a new school and new health services. So maybe the biggest agenda of the city since the new town was created in 1780 odds. And of course, like everywhere else, the construction industry has suffered a bit, but actually what it can do is it can look to the future with some confidence because of that pipeline of housing. So in the next 5 years in the southeast of Scotland, there's 14,000 homes planned to be built. And Edinburgh, what the City Region deal is trying to do is make sure we're creating a demonstrator project to support that. So that's a new business model being created to allow off-site construction to become part and parcel of that housing development right across the region. And of course, all this work and the strong pipeline we've got in the southeast means that we have managed, on top of the City Region deal, to absorb most of Scottish Government's underspend in the housing area. So we've managed to add as we go. So you never look a gift horse in the mouth, as they say. But actually, it's because of the success of the pipeline. If you look at this region, 60% of Scotland's future housing needs sit in this region, which is 3 times more than the West. And I think it'd be fair to say that we don't think that the balance of Scottish Government funding is quite in that category, and that we will be making the case to the Cabinet Secretary for the need for more investment and partnership with the private sector to address that need. Because the place that is growing most in Scotland is the southeast, and we're trying to work hard with government to keep recognising that, and particularly making sure that our housing industry is supported going forward. And that's on the basis of huge demand, as I've just outlined. We are the fastest growing region in Scotland. The strength of partnership, which I think is exemplified today, and if anything, given that I was here right at the beginning of us thinking about the City Region deal, the thing I'm most proud of is the partnership we've created right across the region of both private, public and third sector partners right across the board in delivering this. But that strength of partnership means that we have a track record of delivering. We are the best spending City Region deal in the UK, I believe. we say what we're going to do, and then we spend it and we make sure it's done, which benefits everybody here. And that pipeline of housing and housing potential and land potential means that it is a very safe bet for government to invest in this region. And we're going to be making that case to the Cabinet Secretary in the near future. What we are looking for is your support as Chamber of Commerce's to ensure that we get private sector support and the business support for doing so. The case has never been more important for this region, and in housing terms, from a very strong base, we want to continue to accelerate to create the social, economic and wellness benefits that come from having great quality, affordable housing right across the region. And that's my 4 and a bit minutes, so I'll hand over to you again, Monica.
Thanks for that, Andrew. And you know, you again packed a lot into the 5-minute slot, so huge well done. If we just quickly move on, just keep things going. If I can pass on to now Joanna Baker, Chief Executive Director of Impact Scotland, who's going to talk to us about the culture work stream. Joanna, do you want to carry on?
Good morning, everybody, and thanks very much for the invitation to speak to you all today. I have a slightly different presentation because Impact Scotland is the charity established to develop and run the Junard Centre, which is the Edinburgh South East Scotland City Region Deal's cultural flagship project. So the Junard Centre will be built behind and directly connected to the Royal Bank of Scotland's historic headquarters building on St Andrew's Square, right in the heart of Edinburgh. So it is ideally located for train, bus, tram stops, linking it throughout the city region and wider country. Much has been said about partnerships this morning. This is an incredibly extraordinary partnership. It's supported by the Royal Bank of Scotland. It's got significant private philanthropy investment, a £35 million investment from one private donor, the Junard Fund. And it will be Edinburgh's first purpose-built music venue in over 100 years. So reinforcing and enhancing the city's reputation for cultural excellence with a state-of-the-art venue for the 21st century. And some of you may be a little surprised to know that while Edinburgh is famous, of course, for its cultural life, it lags behind many other cities in its provision of cultural infrastructure. We're blessed and to some extent cursed with this wonderful infrastructure of 19th century venues, which are quite extraordinary. But in order to remain competitive as a destination city and as a city renowned for culture, you do need venues which are able to present work that's made in the 21st century, and the Junard Centre will be that. So we're creating this world-class modern venue, outstanding facilities, acoustics, technology, and strengthening the city region's competitive edge as a world-leading destination. And we believe giving a confident signal of the city's contemporary identity. So the Junard Centre is intended to be a showcase for Scotland's musical excellence in all kinds of music. It's not just about classical music. It will welcome orchestral, but also jazz, pop, folk, chamber groups, soloist bands, choirs, comedians. It'll be a new home for the Scottish Chamber Orchestra and a principal venue for the Edinburgh International Festival. But also it'll be a year-round cultural hub offering a diverse range of programmes with an extensive education and community outreach programme and fully equipped for broadcast, streaming and recording. So in all of these ways, contributing to the conditions needed for culture to thrive in the region and throughout Scotland. Councillor Ross spoke in his introduction about prosperity and well-being, and I guess culture sits at the heart of both of those key things of the city deal. The Junard Centre, and this is a much more specific example than the other themes, but of course, in terms of the Junard Centre, which is what the city deal funding is enabling, but it's part of this extraordinary cultural excellence that Edinburgh represents. Claire Patullo also referred to the Benny Higgins Economic Advisory Group report. And in that, post-pandemic, the significant role of culture and the cultural sector in supporting a robust, resilient, well-being economy was recognised as being even more important. So we're quite certain that Edinburgh's recovery will be significantly driven by the competitive and resilience of its key assets, which include culture. And the Junard Centre is a significant part, or plays a significant role in ensuring that culture is a vital part of city life. We're a slightly earlier stage in some projects here in terms of timescales. The planning, we're just heading towards submission of a planning application, and if anticipating consent in September, we'll be looking at site clearance starting in early 2022 and opening in 2025. So in terms of opportunities for business, we're at the moment, we're a very small charity. We employ just 3 staff. We'll build up the team as we move towards opening, and as our organisation moves from overseeing a construction project to establishing itself as a cultural organisation, and one that's playing its role in the cultural sector and in Edinburgh and Scotland. So over the next period, there will be, the timing is slightly dependent on planning consent, but there will be opportunities for subcontractors to provide specialist advice during the pre-construction services period. We're looking for partners to develop a catering partnership in the catering contracts in the centre. In the run-up to opening, we'll be looking at developing partnerships, which we've already, of course, well underway, cultural, community education, business partnerships, and once open, conferencing, tourism, skills development, digital. I think, as with any other cultural project, in a way, the Junard Centre represents the full gamut of themes and skills represented across the city partnership, city region deal. That's a real whistle-stop tour, because I'm conscious we're short of time. Very happy to answer questions later on about either the specific project or about culture and its role in Edinburgh and the city region more generally. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna, and such an exciting project. Our final speaker this morning on work streams is Jarmo Eskalinen, the Executive Director of DDI Initiative at the University of Edinburgh. So I'll now hand over to Jarmo, who I know is very, very passionate about this work stream.
Very good, thank you for having me. This is going to be a lot to cover in 5 minutes, but I'll do my best. So I lead the Data-Driven Innovation Initiative at the University of Edinburgh. And just to start with, Edinburgh is unique in its competence around data. So we are building the work on the long legacy of data innovation in Edinburgh. We are building on the shoulders of giants. So we are not starting from scratch at all. It's one of the unique aspects of the city, as well as Edinburgh being a cultural city and the centre for financial industries. It is also exceedingly a tech city, big centre for technological innovation and data innovation, and that's what we are supporting through the program. Just for starters, despite the pandemic, the Data-Driven Innovation Initiative is on track. So we are either ahead or meeting our KPIs in this year 3 of the 15-year initiative, which is of course excellent news for the program and the city region at large. Then to the deal, I give you the basics of DDI in a nutshell. So this is a very large scale initiative. It's financially almost 50% of the whole city region deal, 661 million altogether, which consists of 2/3 of capital investment, 270 million from the UK and Scottish governments and 140 million from the University of Edinburgh, and the final third for the operational program, which is roughly split in 200 million from the university and 150 million through different partnerships to join our work streams. So it's a large scale initiative. How does the money work? We are using the capital spent to set up 5 new innovation hubs and a cutting-edge data facility in Edinburgh. And the timeline for the delivery of the hubs is between 2018, which The first hub already has been opened, the base center, to 2024, when the final one, the Azure new build for Azure home base for health and data, will be opened. And between the two moments, there's a series of openings of facilities. So currently we are building the Edinburgh Futures Institute to the old new Royal Infirmary to the west from the central campus, the old building frame from the 18th century. It's already starting to look pretty good, which is the home base for arts, humanities, social sciences, data innovation. At the Heriot-Watt campus, the university has broken ground to build the National Roboterium to be opened in 2023. This year already, we are going to take into use the new home base for the Edinburgh International Data Facility in Easter Bush, which is in Mid-Lothian, which is the computing facility underpinning everything in DDI. And then between this year and 2 years from here, we are upgrading the Easter Bush campus with new data-driven innovation facilities, and then finally the Azure Institute will be open in 2024. The deal has already delivered over 1,000 workplaces connected to the construction projects and acceleration and entrepreneurship activities, which is a great impact to have less than 3 years in the plan, and we have brought home way more than 100 million of investments for these hubs. But what's going to happen in the hubs? We have 5 themes which will describe the impact of the deal, and I talk them through briefly. They form an acronym of TRADE, which spells as T for talent, and there's a ballpark number, 100,000 data scientists who we are going to educate, and more than 700,000 people who get exposed to data, who can upgrade their skills and be more data savvy in the future. In practice, we are embedding data skills across the curriculum of the university, but we are also driving projects which support the development of data scientists in the workforce. For example, the Data Skills for Work program, which is part of the Data Labs initiative, and which is offered to local companies who want to reskill their workforce. Then there's R for research. I won't be going deeper into that. That's our bread and butter as a university. But the next A is critical. That's adoption, which means the DDI supporting 1,000 organizations to benefit from data. And adoption shows itself in major projects which we are now launching. Examples of those: we have creative informatics already halfway through, which supports creative industries to benefit from data innovation through data skills, through accelerator activities, through opportunities to develop new concepts and products. We have financial industries and fintech, which are being supported by the Global Open Finance Center of Excellence, opened in August. 23.5 million from Strengthened Places, which will be doubled through partnerships, which will offer a sandbox for innovation in financial services, safe and secure environment in which companies can develop and test new financial innovations. We are working with the tourism and festivals sector. We are working with health and care sector. In there, we have the Advanced Care Research Centre, which is a £19.5 million collaboration supported by a Legal and General. The National Roboterium I already mentioned, and then underpinning everything is the ethos of doing data right. So what we want to be known for, what we want Edinburgh to be known for, is the place where we started and developed tools and practices to do data innovation in ethical, sustainable way, which respects both the rights of individuals and opportunities of companies. And the main innovation opportunity there is the Centre for Technomoral Futures, which we are running with a £5 million donation from Bailey Gifford. So there's a significant corporate and business-driven collaborations going on already. Progressing through the last bits of the acronym, D is data. Edinburgh International Data Facility will make data available for innovators in safe and secure environment. We already have a collaboration with NHS Scotland, which is called NHS Data Log, which is being used as we speak to understand the long-term impacts of COVID to patients, connecting people's previous health registers with new information. And all of this is run together with NHS, so we are not privatizing healthcare data. It's done to support better care for people. And then last, and very definitely not least, entrepreneurship, E. We have a target of 400 startups either established, set up, or scaled up during the program. We are now close to 100. How that will manifest itself, initiatives like the FAST accelerator for agri-tech companies in Easter Bush, AI accelerator in the base center, or then opportunities for companies to come in with their challenges. Our Students as Change Agent program connects challenge owners, let's say this year, very recently, Scottish Music Industry Association, with clever teams of students who propose data-driven methodologies to crack the challenge. In this case, the challenge which the music industry has was how can we support the music industry to recover from the pandemic? And very doable, realistic online mechanisms for new business was being proposed by student teams. So I guess that covers it for now. Happy to take questions. It's a lot to catch in a couple of minutes. We are building this to support Edinburgh as the tech capital of UK, and we are very connected to the delivery of the forthcoming Scottish Tech Ecosystem review and the actions around that in domains of education and infrastructure. So we want to ensure that Edinburgh which is already the startup capital of Scotland, will be exceedingly so, and will be in such a way that all domains of local business can benefit from data innovation through educated workforce, through joint initiatives with cutting-edge companies, through presence in our 5 innovation hubs, which will be sort of porous places where companies are welcome to join. And before the pandemic, Base Center was already 100% booked. So it is working. We can bring innovators under the same roof to do things in novel ways by innovating with data. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And in the interest of time and keeping to the agenda, I will just hand over now to Alan, who I think is going to take us through the next part of the programme.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Monica, and thank you to all your colleagues. We gave you an almost impossible job to stick to 5 minutes, but we've done pretty well, so thank you for that. Okay, so we've got about 20 minutes set aside now for some Q&A. As I said at the outset, want to get through as many of the questions as I possibly can. So keep them coming in the chat function. I've got a few lined up already, but keep them coming. When I invite you to ask your question, remember to unmute yourself. Even 16 months in, most of us still forget to do it at least once a week. If I could ask you to keep your kind of question short and succinct, please. No kind of War and Peace 3-parters to help us keep within the time. And then once your question's been answered, I'm going to move straight on to the next question. If you have a follow-up you want to make, again, use the chat to let me know, and I'll bring you back in towards the end of the session. But I want to give as many people as possible the opportunity to ask a question. So the first person I'm going to ask to talk to us is Cynthia Guthrie, and Cynthia's question went right to the heart of it, about how you'll actually measure the success of the city deal. Cynthia, you can put it more eloquently than I can.
Thank you very much indeed, Alan, and thanks to all the presenters. Yeah, you've been handed an objective from the government that Scotland will be the best place to live, work and do business, with absolutely nothing, it would appear, behind that to measure compared to what and what would the metrics like behind that look like. In many of the presentations, we've seen tangibles, we've seen projects that will obviously work. Some of it is less tangible, particularly around the skills development stage. One of the problems we've got in business at the moment is that whenever we connect with the public sector, in order to justify the work, we are burdened with bureaucracy to prove what we've just done. What's the best way of measuring the success of the city growth deal overall?
Okay, so which of our panelists would like to take that one, or do I need to just come out and find somebody? Rona, you've got your hand up there.
Hi there, hi Cynthia. There is a whole remit of KPIs and measurement frameworks behind. I mean, I sit on the IRIS for the skills side of it, on how we will measure all of that in terms of whether people are going to improve, their wages improve because of an intervention, about looking at gender gap, about the number of people engaging from the female gender, if that's going to close in certain sectors of it, people getting into jobs, sustaining jobs, and all audited as well as part of the verification of that through our new IKS system. So that's quite a robust side of it, where that is evidenced the whole way through for that particular programme. In terms of when you're talking about the bureaucracy, I absolutely understand that. And our integrated employer engagement fund that we did for employer fund, we kept that so light touch, and that was administered with the support of Business Gateway, and that was part of the feedback that we got. I can show you the evaluation we did of that and the feedback we got from members who participated to say it was the most simple thing they've ever done, because we just kept it very straightforward of get you through it quickly and get the money out to you. Still evidence, still auditable, but kept it a much better approach. And that's what we're using across everything that we're doing. How can we just keep things low bureaucracy, but at the same time evidence what we're doing?
Thank you, Rona. I mean, David, do you have a perspective from the council level? What are the key benchmarks that the councils are using to measure the success of this?
I think it's, as has been said, I mean, I think we have been keen to develop a robust evaluation and monitoring system, and we have to report to the government as well. But I think as has been said, we want to keep that as light touch as possible. But you know, at the end of the day, there is a lot of public money going into this, and we need to be assured that it is being spent in the best way, and not being kind of frittered away in other ways. But you know, and the individual councils as well will have their own overview, particularly of the individual projects.
Okay, thank you. Claire, do you want to say something?
I think it's worth mentioning we have the benefits realisation plan, and members of the REC have been part of that. I don't know the detail of that, I wasn't part of that subgroup, but there is an overarching benefits realisation plan that has been co-created by all the stakeholders and has the KPIs and things that Rona's talked about, and looks at economic growth, it looks like inclusive growth, it looks at, you know, well-being outcomes and different types of outcomes. And we also have our annual conversation. I'm glad to say I'm not part of this annual conversation with the Scottish Government and Westminster Government, because it sounds like it's quite a grueling experience for the officers involved. So there is a lot of scrutiny, there is a lot of checks and balances in place, but it's not a done deal. We're constantly reviewing how we improve on that and how we make it more meaningful and how we make it real for just the lay person on the street, how we make that connection between what is all this bureaucratic activity and sort of council officers working away behind the scenes. How do we make that meaningful for the people that live in our communities? Any suggestions? Welcome.
Thank you, Claire. I don't know, is there another one of the panelists got something burning they want to say about this
Alan,
measuring success?
yeah, Alan, I think it's worthwhile going back to the original outcomes of the deals that were set out, because it's very clearly set out growth in good growth terms. So greater housing, more opportunities for jobs, more opportunities for new businesses. A lot of Jarmo's work they explained in terms of the skills, etc., will turn into jobs and new businesses. That's the intention. But we need the skills and the development. And what I would say is that actually this city deal has absorbed most of the bureaucracy. Andy Nichol, who's on this phone call, acts as our PMO, and he allows the bureaucracy to stay in the committees and the work with us. We are required to comply with Green Book regulations for government to spend their money. And that is quite a bureaucratic process, but actually, as you can see from how well we're spending the money, which is better than any other deal in the country, we're managing to get around that fairly swiftly, and actually spending hundreds of millions of pounds in the first few years of the deal, which is down to an awful lot of the hard work in the project management office, but actually also the collaboration and cooperation that we've managed to generate right across the region in dealing with these things. So I'd be quite confident that the region deal is not a bureaucracy, because the outcomes are appearing quicker than you can possibly think it might have done. This is a 15-year programme, of which the first 5 years has been enormously successful, and I think it's something to be celebrated in that terms.
Thank you.
Maybe a
Andrew.
quick one from myself. We of course are wanting to do as we preach, so we are working hard to be a data-driven innovation program, which means rigorous automatic capture of KPIs across both the university and partners initiatives. And what we want to do relatively soon is to make all of that available for scrutiny through live dashboards.
Okay, thank you, Jarmo. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question now. So first I'm going to bring on Angela Crolla, who's got a question around housing, and then it will be Colin Smith. Colin's got a question around skills. So Angela, your question, please.
Hi, thanks, Alan. I employ about 150 carers, and we do actually pay more than the real living wage. But to be honest, so many of my staff are still in poverty due to housing costs. So my question is, from the 41,000 new houses that's being built, which is fantastic, how many of these are sociable housing and going to be affordable for the likes of my guys to actually have a quality of life?
Okay, thank you, Angela. I mean, Andrew, do you want to pick that up since you delivered
Yeah,
housing?
so you might expect me to say this, but it depends where it is. But the intention in all these schemes is to create a large number of affordable housing. Whatever affordable housing means, I personally hate the term a little bit because it's only affordable if people can afford it. And that means different things in different places. And I think what we've got to do is make sure that we've got the right percentage of affordable housing. It's why we set up, for instance, the Edinburgh partnership to create nothing but affordable housing in Edinburgh itself, because Edinburgh is maybe the one place where affordable housing is not something that's readily available. We are working very hard with the house builders and with Scottish Government to make sure that places like Granton have a large percentage of the new build as affordable housing, because we understand the problem that you've just outlined. We're trying to make Edinburgh, the city, as a very equal place to do that. People have got to be able to afford to live there, not just rent, but able to afford their own housing, and to have a largest percentage of social housing to allow people to be able to access accommodation.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I'm very conscious of time. We've got another presentation after the Q&A, so I'm going to take 3 more questions. So first up will be Colin Smith with a question on skills. Then Arlene Nichols got a question on the Data Education in Schools project, and then finish off with Angela Muhan, who's got a question about the third sector. So Colin, if you could ask your question, please. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks very much for introducing me, and thanks for an insightful presentation so far. So basically, I look after 2 companies. One of them is surfacing, asphalt, etc. Another one is landscaping. We work across the city and in the housing market as well. we've been trying to do a bit of growth over the last couple of years, but found it really difficult to get skilled people to fulfill the roles. And we've decided to try and go for less skilled people and then skill them up into our industry. However, it's been proven really difficult to find suitable training to give them the practical skills that they need to be able to get by on sites, because everything's quite quick moving. The CSCS system is only really suitable to get them on site, but it doesn't give them any real insight into what we do day to day. So it's such a competitive market as well, it's really difficult to provide so much adequate supervision to have less skilled people on site at any time without getting any sort of backup from an external vocational qualification provider. So I guess
yes.
Sorry,
Colin.
Sorry, yeah, I guess the question is how do we plug that gap? We're really keen to develop new skills and bring people into the industry because we understand that there is a skill shortage, but it's just proven too difficult to get people interested in the industry for one, and also when they are, if they do have an interest, how do we keep them and how do we develop their skills when they do decide to join?
A big question for you, Rona, but if it can make your life difficult by asking you to really try and
No, it's fine, because me and Colin have been chatting anyway during the kind of chat function of this, and it's not an unfamiliar situation that we've come across in the past, even with big employers like Edinburgh Airport, because they're very specific jobs, found it difficult to actually look at things like the SVQ framework. What I've suggested to Colin is we have, under our integrated employer engagement, we have, it's like a mini skills centre model where we're helping businesses who are facing those challenges to become their own little mini skills centre with accredited qualifications. That might be a route for you to go down, and what kind of funding that we could look at getting you to help you do that. It might not be the route, but it might be that you actually then become the trainer for your competitors as well, if you're making it, you know, in terms of profit on that. There's also Department of Work and Pensions have a thing called the SWAP funding scheme. There might be something in that as well for upskilling and training. So my suggestion is, Colin, like I've said, is that we take that offline and I'll link you into our project and we can explore what the options might be for that.
Well, thank you very much for that, Rona. So as I say, last two questions. First up is Arlene Nichol, then Angela Muhan. And again, guys, if I can ask you to keep your questions kind of precise and the answers precise as well. Thank you. Angela, Arlene, sorry.
Thanks, Alan. I'll keep my video off, just it helps my connection. So my name is Arlene. I work for the Developing Young Workforce regional team in West Lothian, connecting employers and young people and education within the context of the Young Persons Guarantee. In the interest of time, you might like me, Alan, because Alison has actually basically given me a lot of answers over the chat function in relation to the Data Schools programme. So I'm just going to, you know, I don't need any more information at this point in time. You'll be glad to know. Thank you, Alison, for responding in chat, and I'll let you go on to Angela, Alan.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I like you very much, Arlene. I love you, Alison, for that. Thank you very much. So final question, Angela, you've got a question around the third sector.
I have, thanks very much. Yeah, the very first speaker mentioned the important role of the third sector in the delivery of the city deal. But there wasn't very much mention thereafter of the third sector and the role that is played. So I'm wondering, Rona, perhaps in particular, how the third sector is involved across every region, because, and in particular from my point of view in relation to skills and education, because I know that there is different engagement and different levels of engagement across each local authority area. And not all, the third sector isn't involved in local employability partnerships, for example, in every area. So how is the third sector involved and how can that be improved? Because most of what's been said today has been really informative, but I didn't know about it.
Right, well, this is where you get to the complexities of the employability world, because your local employability partnerships are separate to the city regional deal. So they're all per local authority only, and they answer to the No One Left Behind funding that comes through now. It's been part of the devolved framework that came, that now that funding is going by our local authorities, and the local authorities set their LEPs up as they see fit. We in Edinburgh have a very heavy focus on third sector co-production, co-design. Over 5 million of our funding is held exclusively by third sector partners for frontline delivery, and that's the approach that we take. And the same, Fife also have Fife Opportunities, heavily involved with the third sector. You tend to find the more rural regions, West Lothian, for example, they don't have so much of a third sector footprint, but that is very much part of the governance under No One Left Behind from the Scottish Government funding, that you have to engage with the third sector. So that's the local employability partnership part of it, which I'm involved on. Coming back to my city regional deal head, we took the principles that we have got from our local LEP and have used that in our commissioning. So again, our third sector interface, for example, with our intensive family support service, we have funded projects like Gingerbread Fife, for example, to work with families. We very much value that third sector model, and it's people who have those relationships and those hardest to reach communities are always the ones that are better placed to engage and make that difference. So, and I can't speak for the whole city regional deal, but in terms of our IRIS, absolutely committed to that third sector interface. And we've met with all the third sector interface bodies, presented to them, and making sure that those funds get out wherever we can to those projects.
Thank you very much, Rona, and I hope that reassures you, Angela. But I'm going to press on now. We're for the last presentation, which is coming from Paul Lawrence from the City of Edinburgh Council, and Paul's going to give us a very brief overview of the regional prosperity framework. So thank you for your patience, Paul. We kept you waiting a few minutes. The floor is now yours.
Thanks very much for that, Alan. And given that I think we're meant to finish in 7 minutes, I'm going to try and do this in 2 or 3 to check if there's any time for questions and any closing remarks from yourself or anybody else. So extremely briefly, colleagues have very comprehensively talked about the deal itself. And I think I hope what you've heard from everyone is the sort of sense of momentum. A number of people have referred to this, a sense of momentum that the deal has generated right across the region, both in taking project working forward and really, really importantly, in taking collaboration forward. Collaboration across different geographies, and collaboration across different sectors in the way we've just been hearing about. And I suppose overarching all of that is an understanding that local authorities are what local authorities are. They're there to represent the views of the residents in their regions, but the economy doesn't always reflect the way that local authority geographies work. So we know that there's lots of people commute across different parts of the region. Certainly did pre-pandemic and may do again in the future, who knows. We know that getting, never mind into Edinburgh, but getting from parts of the borders, for example, to the Glasgow area has challenges. So mobility and dependency are key issues. So building on those ideas and building on the momentum which the deal projects and the delivery, as Andrew Kerr said, the deal projects has generated. There was an agreement by elected members working, as Claire Patullo said, closely with the Regional Enterprise Council to build an overarching, what you might call a development strategy for the region, which you'd be surprised to hear we've not previously had. Other parts of the country have had, but in a way it's the deal that's catalyzed that the need for that approach. So we're trying to work on that just now. We're calling it a regional prosperity framework. And there's been lots of debates. We certainly haven't got time today to go into why we've chosen those words. But we talked about growth, and some people, Robert Carr will be familiar with this. Some people think the word growth is a loaded term these days, particularly from an environmental perspective. So we've chosen the word prosperity specifically to try and get across the idea that we need prosperity to reach into every community in the region and every corner of the region, that we know that there's many pockets of affluence in the region, but also much need and deprivation. So we're working on a single regional prosperity framework. It's not going to replace local strategies. It's very much trying to take an overview, as I said before, of how we drive sustainable economic activity and prosperity in the region, and how we recognize those links and dependencies. We're organizing the actions around 3 themes, which is around a flourishing region, a resilient region, and an innovative region. And again, I won't go into those definitions of those words, but I think you'll probably see where they've come from, given the presentations you've heard this morning. And we're setting out, if you like, what the big regional moves should be. You heard from Grace, for example, about the importance of transport and mobility infrastructure. You've heard from Yarmo about the importance of that ambition around a data-driven region. So we're setting out both the themes we want to work for collectively and the key moves and programs we want to move forward with, many of which, in fact, virtually almost all of which, would need to be funded outside the city-region deal. The city-region deal, again, acting as that catalyst. That strategy document is now complete in its draft. It's going to the elected members of the Regional Joint Committee, so that's all the councils working together with partners, this Friday. That meeting's been referred to once or twice. And there will then be an engagement period process. And I suppose this is my key message, Alan. We really need your help. We need the help of the private sector. We need the help of the voluntary sector to really engage with that document, because it is exactly that, an engagement and consultation document. It is not a final strategy. We need to know whether it speaks for Dunfermline as much as it speaks for the borders. We need to know if it speaks for urban and rural, different sectors, different parts of society. So that will be published for consultation as quickly as possible after this Friday for an initial 6-week period. And Andrew Kerr referred to my colleague, Andy Nicol, who runs the Programme Management Office. And Andy will be in touch with all of the chambers, as will our colleagues, in driving forward that engagement. And I suppose that's where I'll finish, Alan. We really need all of your views, because that document will attempt to sum up, if you like, a vision for the future of the region. Andrew Kerr talked about a 15-year city-region deal, but this document will take us beyond that and will be a summary of what we want to try and achieve together. So we really need your help in that engagement process. Thanks very much.
Well, listen, thank you very much for that, Paul. That was, and that's terribly exciting, what you're talking about, your language, your whole, everything. That's fabulous, that long-term vision. Okay, I'm very conscious of the time, but I will take one final question if somebody would like to have the last word. Anybody? Are you all okay? No, I'm not seeing anything. Right, listen, so thank you very much for that. I'll very quickly summarise. We've covered an enormous amount of ground today. Huge amounts of information has been thrown at us all. Pulling it all together, you know, I mean, talk about all these projects, themes, activities, plans. We as chambers definitely want to help you reach out to businesses, but I guess the overwhelming challenge we're going to have is all of this activity might seem very overwhelming to a typical business in one of our areas, and it's how we cut through that so that they can actually almost reach out and touch something and think, wow, that's me. That affects me. I don't know what the answer is, but coming back to David's original point in his initial presentation, it's all about that partnership, collaboration and sharing, because that's the only way we'll answer those really difficult questions. So thank you for participating in the Q&A, folks. I hope you found that useful. And now you've heard enough of me, so I'm going to pass over to my colleague Karen Ritchie from Mid and East Lothian Chamber, so you get to listen to her instead of me now. But thank you for your You're an excellent audience.
Thank you, Alan. So yeah, it's just up to me to thank you all for coming along today. I think we can all agree that it's been very, very informative, especially for me myself. It's been a great insight into the work that's been done already, but also that is planned for the future and how we can hopefully all get involved. So like we said, speak to your chambers. We will try and help you as much as we can. So I need to thank the speakers today for their insight, for their knowledge. And thank you, Alan, for moderating very well and doing well with your questions and keeping everyone going. Thank you to the Chamber colleagues, so that's Mid and East Lothian, West Lothian, Borders, Fife and Edinburgh Chamber. And just thank you to everyone else for coming along today. The session has been recorded and the recording will be available hopefully by tomorrow, and we will distribute that through your local chamber who you signed up with as well. So many thanks for all joining us today and enjoy the rest of your day.